What if everything you've been told about productivity is actually making you less productive? I spent years following every productivity hack, time blocking system, and morning routine I could find. But I kept burning out, feeling behind, and wondering why I couldn't stick to anything. I'll show you 6 principles that flipped my entire approach and why doing less actually got me more done than any productivity system ever did. And if you've ever felt like your brain just shuts down the moment you try to start something important, this first principle is going to change how you think about motivation forever. I used to sit down and think, okay, I need to write this entire YouTube script today, and my brain would immediately go into panic mode. Heart racing, suddenly every other task seemed urgent. And I'd find myself watching YouTube videos or doing something else that I felt like was productive. I thought I was lazy, but then I learned something from a friend. Resistance isn't defiance, it's fear. Your brain sees big tasks as threats. When you say write the script, it hears survive this massive undefined challenge. So it activates fight or flight. Instead of forcing yourself to start, trick your brain into feeling safe. When your nervous system is calm, your prefrontal cortex, the part that gets stuff done, can actually function. And when you're stressed, it goes offline. Don't say write the script, say open the document. Don't say clean the house, say put one thing in this place. Don't say plan your week, say put down tomorrow's first task. The goal isn't to finish, it's to start without triggering your brain's alarm system. Once you've calmed your nervous system, here's how to actually build momentum without burning out. I used to think productivity meant pushing through fatigue. I'd force myself to work when I was mentally drained and then wonder why everything took twice as long and felt like garbage. I discovered that I had 3 peak windows, 9 to 11 a.m., 2 to 3 p.m., and 7 to 8 p.m. Everything else was me just running on fumes. For me, it wasn't a time problem, it was an energy management problem. I think most people schedule based on when they're free, not when they're sharp. And that's like trying to lift weights when you're exhausted. You're just gonna get yourself hurt. Match your hardest work to your highest energy. 1 hour of focused work during your peak beats 3 hours of distracted work during your low points. For me, it's easier to get all the hard things done in the morning, but not everybody's a morning person. So if you wanna figure out your peak levels, start for 1 week by rating your energy from 1 to 10 every 2 hours. Notice the patterns. When do you feel sharp? When do you crash? Schedule your most important work or your heavier tasks during your natural peaks and use low energy times for admin, emails, and planning and things like that. But what happens when you're in your peak energy window and still can't focus? That's where this next principle comes in. Even during my peak hours, I'd sit down to work and immediately face 20 micro decisions. Which task first? Should I check email? What if I miss something urgent? By the time I actually started working, I was already mentally exhausted from deciding what to work on. Every decision you make during work time steals energy from your actual work. Your brain has a limited capacity for decisions each day. When you waste that capacity on what should I do next, you have less left for creative problem solving. So what's worked for me is eliminating decisions before I start doing the work. When you remove micro decisions, your brain can fully focus on execution instead of constantly choosing. I do this the night before. I write down exactly what I'm gonna work on first, and then I'll set out my workout clothes for the morning, and then I'll have a designated set of clothes for the next day. So that way I'm not getting up in the morning and having to figure out what I'm gonna get dressed in and everything like that. I've already done that the day prior. When I get to work, I set up my workspace so everything I need is within reach, and I make sure to turn off all notifications. Decision fatigue is a silent killer for productivity. Now, even with perfect focus, there's one mistake that sabotages everything. And I don't think most people even realize they're doing it. I used to end my days feeling accomplished because I'd answered 50 emails, reorganized my calendar, created 4 spreadsheets to better optimize my business. But when I looked at what actually moved my projects forward, it was almost none of those things. I was addicted to feeling busy because it felt like progress. Busy is not productive though. Your brain rewards activity, not outcomes. So you can feel productive while making 0 progress. This is why you can work all day and still feel behind. You're optimizing for the feeling of productivity instead of actual results. So now I measure impact, not hours. Because when you focus on outcomes, you naturally prioritize what matters. When you focus on activity, you prioritize what's easy. At the end of the day, ask, what did I complete that actually mattered? Not how many hours did I work or how many tasks did I check off. If you can't name one meaningful thing you finished, sadly, you were probably busy, not productive. Busy people do more. Productive people finish what matters. Speaking of finishing what matters, here's the counterintuitive truth about getting more done. I used to beat myself up for procrastinating. I'd force myself to work on whatever I was avoiding, even if it felt like pulling teeth. Then I started paying attention to what I was procrastinating on versus what I naturally gravitated toward. The task I avoided, usually not that important, or I was approaching them wrong. The task I did instead, often more valuable than what was on my official to-do list. Procrastination isn't always laziness. Sometimes it's your subconscious telling you something important. Maybe the task isn't aligned with your goals. Maybe you're overthinking the approach. Maybe it's not actually urgent. So instead of fighting procrastination, maybe you just investigate it. I've learned that resistance often contains valuable information about what's actually worth doing and how to do it better. So the next time you catch yourself procrastinating, ask, is this task actually important, or am I doing it because I think I should? What am I doing instead? Is it more valuable than what I'm avoiding? What would make this task feel easier or more interesting? Sometimes the answer is to drop the task. Sometimes it's to change your approach. Sometimes it's to do it later when you're in the right mindset. Your procrastination is just information, not a character flaw. But here's what happens when you finally build momentum. You start to believe that you have to maintain it 24/7. But that's the fastest way to burnout. Last year, I had one of the most productive months of my life. I was on fire, creating content, finishing projects, feeling unstoppable. So I thought, this is it. I've cracked the code. I'll just keep this pace forever, right? 2 weeks later, I crashed hard. Couldn't focus, couldn't create, couldn't even answer simple emails. I spent the next month recovering from trying to be productive 24/7. Productivity isn't about constant output, it's about sustainable cycles of work and recovery. Your brain needs downtime to process information, make connections, and recharge. When you skip recovery, you don't just get tired, you get stupid. So schedule rest like you schedule work. High performers in every field, like athletes, musicians, entrepreneurs, understand that recovery isn't the opposite of productivity. It's what makes productivity possible. So I have 1 full day per week, usually it's Sundays, where I do no work. No light work or catching up, I'm actually off. And I'll take real breaks during the work week as well. So I'll go on a walk or have a conversation with somebody, or there's some times where I just sit there and stare off into space. When you feel resistance building up, take a day off before you burn out, not after. Rest isn't earned by productivity. Rest is what makes productivity possible. These principles will make you way more productive, but if you're lost and you feel like you're stuck and you don't know what to do with your life, check out this video next, and I'm gonna share with you exactly how I approach that. Keep learning, keep growing, keep going, and I'll see you in the next video.